Hello. Well, since it is Pelvic Organ Prolapse Awareness Month, I thought I would connect with Jenny Del Reeve, who is a ICF accredited life coach and a DIP holistic health coach. Yeah, and I've come to know Jenny, for the last couple of years, I think, and we both had our own experience with pelvic organ prolapse. And I thought today we'd talk a little bit about the emotional impact, hear a little bit of her story, her restoration process, her journey, and she offers to those of you who are also living with pelvic organ prolapse or pelvic floor dysfunction.
But I just want to say thank you to you as well. And before I start into my story, I just want to let everyone know that obviously you are the person who trained Duncan in hyperpressives. So we can't thank you enough because that's, a really integral part of our program as well. So appreciate you. Right back at you.
No, thank you. Yeah, it was awesome meeting Duncan. In fact, I remember the first day I met him on Zoom. I think my hair was curly. And he's like, "Oh my God, you have hair like my wife. It's kind of like that uncontrollable curl." I'm like, "This is true." Yeah.
We could do a whole thing on that, couldn't we? I mean, on the hair.
For sure. So talk to us, Jay. Let us know what do you offer in your Unshakable You, and tell us a little bit about your journey because as you and I both know that there's definitely an emotional component to this diagnosis.
Yeah, I mean, I was diagnosed with 3 prolapses in 2018, right after the birth of our second child, Luca, and I was floored. Because you see, I've been a health practitioner, a functional medicine practitioner, and a life coach, working with hundreds of clients since 2007. So I thought I had the mind-body connection, all the body stuff down, right? So, I mean, and I'm not even joking, Trista, I was someone who did chiropractic work, energy work, EFT, meditation, the best diet. I was a corrective exercise practitioner. I mean, all the things, gut cleansers, you name it. So when it happened to me, I went into this full-on downward spiral. And I just thought, I can't coach people anymore. Because I'd been helping people heal for years, people with cancer, people with thyroid issues. We'd even helped, even though I'd never had a prolapse back then, we'd even helped people with pelvic floor issues, even as far back as 2008. And so I just felt like it's a fraud. And I spent probably about a month really upset, feeling super insecure, depressed. And then I thought, well, I've got to figure out what's going on here. And I thought, if I can figure this out for me, then this is what I'll specialize in. This is what we'll do. And I had to take a really long, hard look at myself because I really thought that I was someone, which is quite hilarious to me now, like compassion for myself. I thought I was someone who was always happy. But I knew from my training and all the work I'd done that a physical issue is an emotional issue at root. So yes, there's a physical avenue. So yes, the birth, for example, or me doing CrossFit until the day I gave birth was the avenue through which it happened. But I knew there had to be an emotional link because, emotions do create in the body. And I'd been sexually abused as a child, so I knew that was linked, but then I was confused because I'd done all the work, tons of therapy. I even lectured on that topic. I'd helped clients overcome it. So for me, there was just this big, big missing link. And then I realized that despite having done all the work on myself, I still had this dominant pattern, this emotional pattern in every single area of my life. And I've coined it the vulnerability to defensiveness cycle, which is a fancy word for saying I was just constantly bouncing around from a feeling of insecurity to then resentment.
Right.
And I knew it was that. So I was resentful towards Duncan. He won't mind me saying. My story was I do everything. I do all the stuff in the house. I do everything in business. That was my story. I was an obsessive exerciser. but to the point that it was the only way I knew how to manage my emotions. So if I didn't exercise, or if we went on vacation holiday, I had no method. When I look back, I had high anxiety, which led to constipation and huge amounts of stress whenever we traveled, and I love to travel. So that wasn't a big issue. I had almost this, it was almost my full identity. I cared to the degree about what people thought about me. It was almost like a sickness. It was like I spent my entire life trying to figure out what people were thinking about me and then somehow change their opinion of me, which is exhausting.
Yeah.
I thought I'd had anorexia as a teenager, and I thought I was over it. But when I looked at myself, I thought, no, you're still a functioning anorexic, really, or somebody with an eating disorder, Always obsessing about body fat percentage, always counting macros, always controlling every single thing I ate. So, people could say, well, that's a healthy strategy, but it was like a prison. It's like a self-imposed prison. As soon as our daughter Bella was born in 2014, I developed this huge fear that she would be kidnapped. And, and I just thought, maybe all brand new mothers think this. And then got chatting so we were living in France at the time, and I got chatting to some of my friends, and the French are super direct, which is what I love that about them. And they were sort of like, no, I've never had that thought in my life. I was like, what? Really? No. And I had a fear of the dark. As soon as it got dark, if Duncan went out, I'd feel this high anxiety. I'd start bringing the shutters down. You have to have shutters in houses in Europe. I'd be bringing the shutters down, and Duncan would be saying things like, can we just not enjoy the sunset? Like, no, the house has to come, all the doors locked, right? Right. And I honestly thought that all women felt this way on planet Earth, right? I just thought that women feel that way. And when Duncan and I, once Duncan and I had healed me together, and we actually interviewed over 100 women, half of the women with prolapses and half without, I was beyond shocked that the women without prolapses did not identify with any of that stuff I've shared there, but the ones with prolapses all did.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And when I would say to them, have you ever worried about your kids being kidnapped? They would sort of say, yeah, how do you know? Yeah, Whereas I interviewed women without prolapses, women who were ultra marathon runners through the night, and I would say to them, one woman I remember in particular, I interviewed her for about an hour and a half, and I said, when you're running through the night, on a couple of the all-night Alps races, the Mont Blanc race, for example, what are you thinking? And she said, the stars, how much I can move my body, what a great challenge. And I didn't believe her. I said, no, so you are not thinking that somebody's going to jump out and murder you in the dark then, or that you're going to fall down a crevasse. Why would I be thinking that? She said. And I thought, wow, this is a thing I've got going on here. This is a fear pattern that got started when I was younger as a child. I thought I had changed, and I haven't changed. It's everywhere in my life. When I was constantly thinking about the future, and I've named it catastrophic fantasizing because it makes me laugh. But I was literally constantly thinking about all these terrible things that could happen in the future. And I didn't know to the degree I was doing this, but I was doing this all the time. And I knew that if I made an emotional journey from a feeling of insecurity and a lot of rage, which was not nice for me to admit, but a huge amount of rage, to a feeling of security, I knew my body would heal. And it did.
Okay. And so talk to us a little bit about maybe the journey that you take some of your clients through. I know you hold workshops on Mondays. Where you invite women in who would like to find out a little bit more about what you're offering and your approach. So I think this is interesting, and I think it's really important, and it's really important to address, and for those who have pelvic organ prolapse to just be curious. Be curious about maybe some patterns that they've been doing for years, maybe attend one of your workshops and just see if they identify with some of these traits or not. And if they don't, it's like, okay, that's awesome. But if they do, then they found a place where they can feel safe and they can connect with someone who's been through that journey. that can help guide them. So what would that process look like a little bit? How are you able to share that?
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, we have a program, so which we started last year. So what we do is we take women through a process of processes that we've created, so emotional processes where we actually help people change, their thoughts, their mind, their emotions, and then there's the physical side of things, which Duncan does. So that is, we obviously have that process within the program, and many women in the program have already healed, which is really awesome. And our workshop on a Monday is literally just a taster, exactly as you said. We are absolutely 100% not for everyone. A wee niche in women who can identify with that pattern I talked about, because not everybody has experienced trauma with a prolapse, right? Mm-hmm. But many have. So we niche in that pattern. So what I do in our workshop is I take you through the steps of how a prolapse is created if you have that trauma pattern, what to do about it, and I also break down the belief that it can't be healed. Yeah. So in my humble opinion, for the right person who is willing to look into things like quantum physics and the mind-body connection and who that clicks for, I believe that person can heal. I'm not saying everybody can or everyone's in the same situation. But so we deep dive into that in the free workshop. It's just a taster into what we do essentially, without having to. Some people sit there on mute, camera off, which is fine, because they kind of want to think, what is this about? Yay! And I'm okay with that. We're absolutely not for everyone, and nor do we want to be either. We know where we fit in our particular niche. Yeah.
But I think the more knowledge we have as women, men as well, the better. And I think even someone who goes into that workshop and discovers that that's not for them, that's a knowledgeable piece of information that they're like, hey, that's great. I know mine's not connected to that aspect, right? So it's like, okay, now I can move forward with another avenue, right? That will help me. And it's just kind of like learning more about who you are, really, right? And if it is for you, then it's like, oh my God, I think I found my place. And I think I found why, and can start on this journey with Unshakable You, right? And figure out how to maybe piece the puzzles together, or however you would say, And there's like a huge emotional connection with the diagnosis of pelvic organ prolapse. That even from my own diagnosis in 2012. And I think one thing too, like you say, is when we're told you can't do anything about it, it just is, and you can't do X, Y, Z because you have it. All of that stuff like ties into that negative, like I can't do anything about it. This, what adds to the depression, which adds to the upset, to the frustration, the anger, and everything else. Yeah. And I think also you agree, or it sounded like part of your story, where there was a point where I just like had to flip the switch in my brain. And I'm like, it was literally like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not letting this dictate what I can and can't do for the rest of my life. And once you're thinking like this, and you have to constantly tell yourself, like whenever I find myself in a negative about it, no, pull yourself together. There's a lot of things that you can do. It's not terminal, and you have to, I think the journey goes from, like you say, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the blame, the why me? Like I'm in the fitness and like, why did it happen to me? Same. And
totally.
Then once you're told that there's something that can help you, for me it was hypopressives. For you it was this unwinding this box, or opening up this box of experiences you'd had, and kind of working through that. Then I think you're like, okay, I can do this, and you can yourself, right? Like I think there's a to positive talking to yourself. You can do this, you got this, you can move through this. And I think the body moves in a positive direction if the brain wants it to move in a positive direction and can let go of that tension. And we hold a lot in our bodies, in our breath, and we kind of have holding pattern, right? And we need to release this in order for tissues to move and restore, and so we can feel like our new, a new body map, right? A new sense of self, continue to enjoy life the way we want to enjoy it. Yeah.
Totally. And I think one thing with our niche that we're really careful with as well is that if you've experienced a trauma and you've rattled around on what I like to call the Wild West of planet Earth for a couple of decades, you can't do Hollywood law of attraction. Because people are intelligent, right? And when they come to us for an interview, they say, Jenny, I've tried positive thinking. I've tried to visualize what I heard the other day in an interview, my uterus lifting in the air. I've tried to do it and it's not working for me. No, because you cannot take an insecure, fearful vibration, which our niche has, and all of a sudden whack it up to joy and then try and expect to believe that. You can't undo 20 years of understandably, as I did, and this is what I was trying to do. I was trying to do all the EFT and the functional medicine and the energy clearing, and all that stuff's wonderful, really wonderful. But for some people, and they're the people we help, that does not work. I always like to say I have to teach these people adult, grown up, bashed around on the planet, traumatic law of attraction, which is completely different for, let's say, a 20-year-old who's never experienced any trauma and can just visualize themselves as XYZ and then have it manifest, in a couple of years or something. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of rainbow bridging, and we really show people how to manifest around an attention-grabbing reality, how to do it authentically and actually feel it, because the words you use when it comes to law of attraction are completely irrelevant if you don't believe them.
Yeah,
it's a frequency that we emit like a radio signal, and it's that. And I don't know if you think it might be helpful for me to explain, but a lot of people really struggle to understand, well, how does changing that thought, what does that do to my pelvic floor? So I think if you think it's relevant, I think that might be helpful for people to explain what actually happens, right?
Yeah.
And this, I worked for years as a functional medicine practitioner and a holistic health practitioner, and this is obviously years before prolapse. And I used to get all these women tested all the time, and they would all have pretty much the same thing going on: adrenal fatigue, obviously stress, low estrogen, low hormones, etc. The body was constantly robbing the mother hormone just to pump out more cortisol, right, to keep them alive. And then they would all often have a pelvic tilt on one side. And I think, and I had all of the same stuff going on as well, by the way. So I was like, what's going on with this all here? And I would put them on these wonderful gut protocols or get them on bioidentical hormones, and they would get some relief, but they weren't getting full resolution of their symptoms, and neither was I. And I thought, there's got to be something underneath this. And as soon as I started to do the emotional work with them, really unbelievable things started happening. So chiropractic, I would do the emotional work with them, and Duncan works with the fascia, and chiropractors would phone Duncan up and say, what are you guys doing? Because I've been adjusting this client's pelvis for 20 years, twice a week, and now it's imbalanced, and you haven't even put your hands on this person. I'm like, we're not doing it, they're doing it. They're your thoughts affect everything at a cellular level. They affect the amount of fascia being dumped down in your pelvic basin. Water and energy flows through your fascia. It affects your skeletal system. When you're confident, you'll walk in a different way to when you're depressed.
Yes.
It affects you at a hormonal cellular level. So once you start to make these connections, because I see everywhere, in groups everywhere, a prolapse is a hernia and it can't be healed. Well, if you look at it from a pure physical perspective, I 100% agree with you, of course. But if you get a bit wider, and it might be super out there for some people, and you start to understand what's potentially going on here, fascia can heal, ligaments can repair. The body can return to homeostasis. An entire skeletal system can rearrange itself. Disc bulges can heal. I've seen all kinds of things in the last 20 years. So it's just often how far, whether it's for you and how far you want to take it in that kind of thinking. But there's so much about the human body that we don't know.
I know. So amazing. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so I think that's good. That sort of sums up that and lets people know what happens with Unshakable You. Gives us a little bit of a background of your approach, which I think is awesome. And I really wanted to just let the audience know that there is this whole other area to explore, right? It's not just what the doctor says or the physio says. There are other options out there. And I really love the work that you're doing. And Duncan's always awesome in the courses, of course. This is great. So I know you guys are doing a good job teaching the hypopressives over there, including it as part of your program. So Jenny, thank you so much for joining me and share a little bit of information about your workshops in the caption.
Perfect.
And
thank you. Appreciate you.
I think that's great.